Hello, welcome to another video. There was a video before this one, and there will be another one after it. So today I want to talk about masking. It's pretty well known among autistic people and even people with ADHD, and it's essentially a thing where you change your personality and the way that you present yourself to the world in order to fit in with people or to hide certain aspects of yourself that may be undesirable for people. This is something that can be connected to Jungian shadow work. At least, like, in my mind, I could connect them, where the mask is sort of the version of yourself you present to the world, and everything behind the mask is like the hidden identity, the shadow. It's not necessarily exactly like that. I don't think that people necessarily mask to like hide their traumas from the world or to hide their shadow from the world. I think most people mask because they've simply been told that the way they act is wrong and they need to act different ways. And they aren't understood. They feel that they can't express themselves properly if they don't mask. And a lot of people mask unintentionally without even realizing it. This is a very common thing for people to sort of come across the concept of masking and be like, wait a minute, I've been doing that for the past 20 years of my life. Are you telling me that this is like an unhealthy thing to do? So here's the problem with masking. It can come with complications. It can be a tool to help you get through social interactions and, like, say, keep a job and things like that. But it's very exhausting because it obscures the self. It obscures your identity, not only from other people, but from yourself. And if you're so deep into masking that you don't even realize you're doing it, you might actually have no idea who you truly are. And that's a big problem. It can also come from a place of people-pleasing and perfectionism and trauma, and responding to those things in an unhealthy manner by sort of, not processing them and not integrating them, but rather just sort of plopping a Band-Aid on top of them and saying, I can get through the world pretending that this stuff isn't relevant to me. That can be pretty unhealthy too. And as a communication tool, masking is exhausting. It's very tiring. It takes a lot of brain power, even when you don't realize you're doing it. And it can lead to people being burnt out from socializing to the point where they feel they don't even like socializing. They don't even want to do it anymore. But the truth is, humans inherently, no matter who you are, you want to socialize. You want to have connections with people. And so we tend to mask in a desperate attempt to connect with people and communicate with people and fit in with people. But it turns out that it's exhausting and it's potentially a trauma response, and it can keep you from understanding who you really are. So here's how I deal with masking. I discovered at one point that I was masking for my whole life, and I had to, figure out what I was going to do about that, because there's a certain level at which I want to express myself authentically, but I also know that I will be rejected by society if I express myself just without any sort of filter between the raw me and other people's interpretation of me. So there are certain ways to mask that I think are healthier. In terms of stimming, for example, there's a lot of covert stims that even neurotypical people do that you can use to regulate your nervous system when you're out in public or out with friends or something. And it's not going to make you look like, it's not going to bring judgment upon you if that's something that you're concerned about. Now, of course, I believe that people should be able to stim however they want. People should be able to fully unmask and be as openly autistic and neurodivergent as they want to be without judgment. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. People will judge that kind of thing, and people will have an instinctual response to it. So to avoid that kind of criticism and judgment, and to be safer in the world, I stick to covert stims when I'm out in public. And that's things like cracking my knuckles or stretching my neck, or even just sort of like swaying back and forth. If somebody were to ask me like why I'm moving so much, I might say like, oh, I just got some music in my head, and I'm sort of just dancing to the music. And that might be true. But in reality, what I'm doing is regulating my nervous system covertly in a way that doesn't draw too much attention and isn't disruptive to other people's perception of me. The other thing is that masking doesn't necessarily have to actually mask anything. It can actually just be an authentic expression of the self that is translated to be received correctly by the other person. So if I'm interacting with a neurotypical person, I would like to express myself authentically, my values, my worldview, my opinions, but I would also like to be received by that person. And so I need to put in at least a little bit of work in order to be received properly by them. And so that's what I do. So, for example, I might express the same opinions and values and like worldview to different friend groups in different vocabularies, in different styles, in different tones of voice, right? Like, I don't talk to my best friend the way that I talk to the camera, right? I don't talk to one friend group the way I talk to another friend group, and this is called code switching. And that's perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that as long as it's coming from a place of authenticity and you're not like just acting as if you're trying to be somebody you're not, right? So I can express myself in different ways while still expressing the same authentic self every time. Another example is like, let's say you mask in a way that's sort of like hyper masculine. Let's say you need to express your masculinity in a certain way to feel good about yourself and to feel like you're being received properly by the world, but it doesn't actually reflect a security in your own masculinity. It actually reflects an insecurity in your masculinity. And this can be something like a lot of people go through. Even neurotypical people could go through this in this specific example. But there are ways to express masculinity in a healthy, secure way that doesn't really feel like masking. It feels like, this is just how I am masculine, right? This is my brand of masculinity. And that can be whatever you want it to be. Really, you're gonna have to decide what your self is, what your authentic self is, and discover that, and then figure out how to express that to other people in a way where it's received. That's the whole point. And that's how we get away from exhausting forms of masking that feel just like, you go home and you feel like a different person than who you are to other people, which is not fun. So how do we achieve this? First of all, you got to discover who you are, right? If you've been masking, especially if you've been masking unintentionally without realizing for a really, really long time, this might be a little difficult, but you're going to have to put in some mental work to figure out, what are my values? What do I really believe in? What do I want to express to people, even if maybe they don't like those opinions, even if maybe they treat me a little differently because of those opinions, right? How do I express these things to people in a way that is going to be received properly? So to discover who you are, one thing you can do is think about what you would do in situations rather than how you would do them. Right? Think about like what you would do if somebody needed help or emotional support. Would you support them, or would you think, I'm not good enough for this and I need to get somebody else? Or would you recommend a therapist to them or something like that? Right? What would you do? What would you do if there was a stray kitten, that needed medical care? What would you do in that situation? Would you take the kitten in? Would you take it to the vet and take it to a shelter where it could get adopted? Would you contact your friends? Don't think about how you would do these things, what exact words you would use or what facial expressions. Just think about what you would do. And then you can shape how you do it in the moment. So aim for accomplishments rather than attitudes or personality, right? Supporting your friends, expressing an opinion. These are things that you do, things that you would do, right? Rather than attitudes or, personality or some kind of like character, right? Like, what would I really do in this situation? Not how, but like, what would I do? And keep in mind, people are always going to misinterpret you no matter how much work you put into being interpreted in a preferable way. It's always going to happen. People are always going to have their own ideas. They're always going to have their own projections that they project onto you. Just accept that this is going to happen and try to recognize when it's happening, when you're not being received properly. It's not your fault. There is no need for you to over-explain yourself. You can keep it vague. You can allow room for people to misinterpret you. It's not the end of the world. If you need to clarify for some practical reason, like your boss hates you for something that you didn't even do, then yeah, you can clarify and deal with that. But that doesn't have any bearing on your values and your personality, right? If somebody is misinterpreting you, that's their problem. That's all in their head. So if you're confident in your own self and your own identity and your own security, you're not going to be bothered by people misinterpreting you, because you're going to understand that it's nothing wrong with me. It's just them. I've expressed myself, as clearly as I really need to. And this person still is intent on misinterpreting me. So whatever, right? Just keep being yourself, and the people who see you will see you. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have no impulse control whatsoever, or that you have, a personality that's very difficult to keep up with for people around you. Again, you want to know what your authentic self is, what your values are, what your opinions are, what your worldview is, and then you can express that in various different ways, in different situations to different people, and think about, what can I say or do, or what can I say and how can I say this in a way that will be received properly by the other person. And you might have to take into account things like their worldview as well, if you're really gonna, do this. But ultimately, all it takes is understanding your own self and then expressing that authentically. And there's many, many, many ways to do it correctly. All right, this has been a pretty short video, especially compared to my last video, which is over an hour long. If you'd like to hear my lovely voice for over an hour, go ahead and check out that previous video. It's about psychedelics and my experiences with them. And if you'd like to support me, there will be links in the description for that. And thank you so much for watching, and have a peaceful day. Don't do it, bro. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't. What are you doing? Bro. Are you kidding me?